What if I told you that one of history's most infamous emperors didn't just burn cities or kill his mother? He tried to recreate his dead wife by forcing a young boy to become her. This isn't a myth. It's not some twisted legend from a lost civilization. This happened in the Roman Empire. His name was Sporus. He was young, beautiful, and helpless. Nero, the Roman emperor known for madness and murder, looked at this boy and saw something terrifying. A replacement. He castrated the boy, gave him his dead wife's name, dressed him in royal robes and jewelry, held a public wedding, and introduced him to the empire as his new empress. By the time he laid eyes on the boy, Nero had already committed unspeakable acts. He had watched Rome burn, silenced his critics with poison and blade, and declared himself not just ruler of the empire, but an artist, a god, a performer on the grandest stage. Power had warped him completely. Poppaea, Sabina, his second wife, beautiful and elegant, and Nero killed her. She was pregnant at the time of death. Poppaea was no ordinary empress. She was the only person Nero seemed to truly desire and possibly fear. Afterward, he wanted her back. Not in memory, not in dreams, but in flesh. That's when Sporus entered the picture. The boy looked eerily like Poppaea, at least in Nero's eyes, and that resemblance, that was enough. It didn't matter that Sporus was a child. It didn't matter that he was a boy. Nero didn't see a person. He saw a replacement, a body to mold, a face to dress. And so, with no more emotion than if he were carving a statue, Nero ordered the boy to be castrated. This wasn't some private affair hidden in palace walls. No, Nero turned his madness into a spectacle. He dressed Sporus in imperial gowns, adorned him with Poppaea's jewelry, and even organized a grand public wedding. Yes, a wedding. Nero took Sporus as his bride, with all the pomp and ceremony of a royal union. The empire watched. Some whispered. Most stayed silent. Who could challenge a man who had already declared war on reality? Sporus was now no longer himself, if he ever truly had a self to begin with. He was the emperor's new wife, a doll made to smile, to stand beside him at banquets, to play the part of Poppaea reborn. But this wasn't love. This wasn't grief. It was a performance, one written and directed by a man who could not live with what he had done. So he tried to rewrite the world around him instead. And Sporus? He was the tragic actor who never auditioned for the role. Imagine being a child, perhaps 13 or 14, dragged into the emperor's chambers, not for punishment, not for crime, but because of your face. Because you reminded him of someone dead. Someone he killed. This was the beginning of Sporus's transformation, and it was nothing short of horrifying. The first step was physical, castration. A brutal, irreversible act meant not only to strip Sporus of his manhood, but to freeze him permanently in a boyish, feminine state. In ancient Rome, this wasn't done gently. There was no anesthesia, no mercy. It was a deliberate mutilation, and it was done to make him more like her, Poppaea. Then came the clothes, silk robes, jewels, perfume. Wigs styled to match the empresses. Nero didn't just dress him up. He recreated Poppaea in every thread, every ornament. Sporus was forced to speak in a soft, trained voice, to walk slowly, with grace, to behave as a Roman noblewoman would. Not a boy in disguise, but a fully public replacement. And Nero didn't keep this secret. No, he paraded it. They attended festivals together, banquets, public appearances. Nero introduced Sporus as his wife, even having him carried in a litter like an empress. The Roman elite, bound by fear and sycophancy, played along. Senators bowed. Courtiers applauded. No one dared to speak of the madness out loud. To outsiders, it may have looked theatrical, another one of Nero's bizarre antics. But for Sporus, it was daily psychological torture. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't performing. He was trapped, a living ghost in someone else's identity, a boy forced into womanhood, not by choice, not by identity, but by command. Every morning, he woke not knowing where the performance ended and where he began. Because in Nero's world, there was no difference. Sporus had become a symbol, not of love, not of memory, but of power, raw, delusional, imperial power, the kind of power that could murder a wife and then reconstruct her from the body of a child. And in all of this, Sporus remained voiceless. There are no surviving words from him, no letters, no diaries. His silence speaks louder than anything he could have said, because how do you speak when even your name, your voice, your very self has been taken from you? When Nero died in 68 AD, alone, terrified, and declared an enemy of the state, Rome exhaled. The tyrant was gone. The empire lurched into chaos. Civil war erupted, generals turned on each other, and emperors rose and fell like dice thrown on blood-stained marble. And in the middle of it all stood Sporus. You might think his nightmare ended with Nero's death. But for Sporus, being Nero's widow was not a path to escape. It became a haunting identity that followed him like after Nero's suicide. Sporus didn't vanish into obscurity. Instead, he became a macabre prize, a living relic of the fallen emperor's madness. He was soon taken in by Nymphidius Sabinus, a commander of the Praetorian Guard who briefly tried to seize power for himself. And what did Sabinus do with Sporus? He proposed to marry him. Yes, again, a different man. A different wedding, but the same nightmare. Sporus was no longer a person. He was a symbol, a trophy of proximity to power. Sabinus wanted legitimacy. So what better way than marrying the emperor's former bride? But Sabinus was killed before the wedding ever took place. Then came Otho, one of the many short-lived emperors in the year of the 4 emperors. Otho, too, had once been married to Poppaea before Nero took her. It's possible that Otho kept Sporus out of some twisted sense of connection to the past, a living reminder of what both men had lost. But once again, Sporus was not cared for. He was kept, like furniture, like a cursed heirloom no one could throw away. By now, Sporus was likely in his late teens, but he had never truly grown up. Not freely, not fully. His youth was spent being passed between men who saw him not as a survivor, but as a souvenir of madness. He didn't belong anywhere. Not to Nero, not to Otho, not to himself. He was a doll without a master, until Rome found a new way to break him, and that final act was the cruelest of all. By the time Emperor Vitellius seized power, Sporus had survived 4 emperors, 2 attempted marriages, and years of living as someone he never asked to be. But Rome wasn't finished humiliating him. Vitellius, brutal, vulgar, and eager to entertain, found Sporus amusing, not as a person, but as a joke, a walking scandal, and he wanted to put on a show. The plan was grotesque. Vitellius ordered a public spectacle where Sporus would be dressed again as a bride, Nero's bride, dragged into the arena in front of a jeering crowd. The twisted reenactment would mock Nero's madness and Sporus's suffering. It would end with his violation by a wild animal as part of the entertainment. This was not theater. This was ritualized cruelty, sanctioned by the state. And in that moment, facing the final, most degrading performance of his life, Sporus did something that would be his only act of control in years. He took his own life. No stage, no ceremony, no applause, just silence. We don't know how he did it. The details were never recorded. After all, why would the empire document the death of a boy it never treated like a person? A doll breaking doesn't make headlines, it just disappears from the shelf. But in that silence, Sporus spoke louder than anyone had allowed him to. For the first time, the performance ended on his terms. And with his death, the curtain finally fell on one of the darkest, most twisted stories of ancient Rome.